Imagine receiving something that appears utterly ordinary, almost empty. An object that, at first glance, seems to hold no purpose or worth. This is precisely what happened to a young man who, after his grandfather's passing, inherited a simple, unassuming book. It was entirely blank, no title, no illustrations, with every page untouched. Feeling a slight disappointment and confusion, he wondered why anyone would leave something so plain, so lifeless, as an inheritance. Was it a mistake? What could he possibly do with a book that had nothing written within its pages? Yet, before he could dismiss the thought, he discovered a peculiar note left by his grandfather just for him. In it, his grandfather had set him an unusual task. He was to take the book to 3 different places and ask people what they thought it was worth. Only by exploring the value of the book through the eyes of others, the note read, might you discover its true worth, and perhaps, even your own. Intrigued, with a hint of skepticism, the young man set off on this journey, carrying the blank book to places where he hoped someone might reveal its purpose. Along the way, he encountered a wide range of perspectives, from people who dismissed the book as useless to those who saw boundless possibilities in its empty pages. Each encounter not only led him to question the book's value, but also made him reflect on the hidden potential within himself. Following this journey may stir something within you as well, prompting reflection on your own life, your unexplored potential, and the worth that exists beyond what others can immediately see. This simple book, and the young man's quest to understand it, could hold the key to a profound realization about self-worth, purpose, and the beauty of life's blank pages, waiting to be filled. The Antique Curiosity Shop. The young man chose to start his grandfather's strange task in the most curious place he could think of, an antique shop. He sensed that the shop, with its mysterious atmosphere and the rich variety of objects carrying countless stories, was the perfect setting to begin his search for answers about the blank book. Stepping inside, he was greeted by the sound of creaking doors and the faint scent of aged wood and dust, heightening the sense that he had entered a place where past and present intertwined, where every object seemed to hold a secret. The shop was filled with curious and rare items, from ancient clocks still ticking with the rhythms of a bygone era to small, rusted sculptures and old books, their pages yellowed and worn by time. Each item had a story, and the young man found himself wondering about the many people who had passed through, perhaps in search of something significant, an object that might resonate with their own lives. But that afternoon, he was there for a different reason, to find out how much his grandfather's book was worth. Though he wasn't entirely sure why, he felt that this place would be where things might finally begin to make sense. He approached the counter, where the shopkeeper, a man of advanced years with a keen, curious gaze, watched him with a blend of interest and mystery, as if he already knew what was about to unfold. Without waiting for the young man to speak, the shopkeeper cast a discerning look at the book in his hands, noting the lack of title, the blank pages, and the simplicity of its cover. It was clear that the elderly shopkeeper had a special knack for swiftly grasping the essence of each object, yet, at that moment, he appeared puzzled. "May I help you?" he asked, his gaze fixed intently on the book. The young man hesitated, unsure how best to explain his purpose. "Finally," he replied, "I'd like you to appraise this book. It was a bequest, but it's empty. I want to know, in your eyes, what it's worth." The shopkeeper's expression grew more serious as he carefully took the book, as if handling something fragile or valuable. Soon, however, a faint smile appeared on his face, as though he had already discovered the answer the young man sought. After a few moments of observation, the shopkeeper replied with a straightforward but calm tone, "Well, young man, if I had to appraise this as a collector's item, I'd say it's worth little. Without content, it's merely a decorative piece, something one might place on a shelf to lend an air of sophistication. There are no stories written, nothing anyone has read or connected with." He paused, studying the young man once more, as though he knew this was not quite the answer the young man had hoped to hear. To hear that the book was worth little felt slightly disheartening. He had held on to the hope that this first stop might reveal something extraordinary, something that would shed light on the purpose behind this peculiar inheritance. He took the book back into his hands, now feeling that, in his grasp, it truly was just a cover and blank pages. He thought to thank the owner and leave, perhaps to seek a better answer elsewhere, but the shopkeeper offered one final remark. But I should say, the man continued, with a shrewd, thoughtful look, some people might see this book as a kind of mirror, something they could fill with their own ideas, dreams, and stories. But to anyone finding it here, empty, it has little worth. The comment sparked a reflection in the young man, leaving an intriguing sense of mystery in the air. As he left the shop, he carried with him not only the book but also the strange feeling that perhaps his grandfather wanted him to view this object differently. The first attempt had failed to reveal any grand value, but it had planted a seed of curiosity. Why, after all, had his grandfather chosen to leave him a blank book? The local art gallery. Following the initial experience in the antique shop, where his blank book was deemed of little value, the young man sensed that perhaps he wasn't searching in the right places. He needed an environment where people saw things with a more creative perspective, where they could see beyond the obvious, beyond what immediately met the eye. And so, he decided to take the book to a local art gallery, a place he had always admired for its ability to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. The gallery was a bright, open space, with white walls adorned by paintings of all sizes and styles. Here, the silence felt almost sacred, interrupted only by the soft sound of visitors' footsteps, who moved slowly, absorbing each detail of the displayed artwork. The atmosphere was entirely different from the antique shop. Here, each piece was valued not for its literal representation, but for the unique interpretation it offered to each viewer. This filled the young man with hope that perhaps, in this place, his book might be seen differently. The gallery owner, an artist known for his modern and abstract sculptures, greeted him with a gentle smile and a keen eye. A man of few words, his gaze suggested a deep curiosity, as if he were always searching for something invisible to ordinary sight. The young man hesitated for a moment, but then pulled the book from his bag and handed it to the artist. "I'd like to know how much you believe this is worth," he said, attempting a confident tone, though still feeling a touch of skepticism regarding the value of the empty book. The artist accepted the blank book with surprising delicacy, as if it were a masterpiece. He examined it for several minutes, carefully turning each blank page, as though searching for something the young man couldn't see. Finally, he closed the book and, with a slight smile, said, "A blank book is like an empty canvas. Its value isn't in the pages but in what could be placed upon them. To me, this book is worth exactly as much as what you're willing to create within it." The young man stood silent, surprised by the answer. It wasn't a financial value, as he had expected, but a deep reflection on potential and creation. To the artist, the book represented a universe of possibilities, seeing it as something filled with value precisely because it was empty. Each page offered a new chance for expression, a new story waiting to be told. The artist continued, "This book could become a work of art, a one-of-a-kind piece, if someone had the courage to fill it with their truest self. It is a mirror of what lies within you. It is worth what you see in yourself." Those words echoed in the young man's mind. For the first time, he began to wonder if his grandfather's gift was more than just an object, but rather a metaphor. Perhaps the blank book was an invitation to reflect on his own possibilities, on what he could create within his life. Each blank page represented a choice, a chance to bring something unique to life. In the gallery, the book had taken on new significance, becoming a piece valued not for what it was but for what it could become. The young man thanked the artist and left the gallery, this time with a different feeling. If, in the antique shop, he had left with the impression that the book had little worth, he now realized that perhaps the book's value was tied to what he chose to do with it. The art gallery had given him a new perspective on the book, as though the notion of worth was something he could shape himself. As he walked home, he wondered, what if that book truly was a representation of his own life? The ancient library. With his mind brimming with thoughts after visiting the gallery, the young man decided it was time to take the book to a place where ideas and stories held timeless value. He thought of somewhere he had always associated with wisdom, history, and knowledge, the city's ancient library. Surrounded by volumes filled with ideas and experiences spanning centuries, he hoped that his blank book might finally find a clear meaning, something that would tie together all he had heard so far. The library was majestic and imposing, with endless corridors lined with shelves packed with old and rare books. The air held that unmistakable scent of aged paper and leather, a smell that evoked a sense of respect and reverence for the knowledge within those pages. The young man walked slowly to the counter, where an elderly lady, her white hair pinned in a neat bun and eyes that seemed to have witnessed the passing of generations, greeted him with a warm smile. "How may I help you, young man?" she asked, her voice gentle and soothing, making him feel instantly comfortable enough to explain the purpose of his visit. He placed the blank book on the counter and explained his task, sharing the challenge his grandfather had left him. He then asked the librarian how much she thought the book might be worth. Unlike others, she didn't pick up the book right away. She simply looked at it, contemplating for a few moments before responding. At last, she took the book carefully, as though it were a treasured artifact, and began leafing through it slowly. Each blank page seemed to fascinate her, and the young man noticed a spark in her eyes he hadn't seen in anyone else. After a long silence, she finally closed the book and looked at him with a serene and thoughtful expression. A blank book is the promise of everything yet to be said. In this book lie all the stories yet unwritten, ideas awaiting discovery, and feelings needing expression. She paused, letting her words settle in the air before continuing. "You see, my dear, the value of a book isn't only in what has already been written. It's also in its ability to hold what hasn't been imagined yet, the possibilities it holds for the future. A blank book is, in a way, the most precious of all, for it represents all the lives and stories yet to come." The young man listened in silence, each word shedding light on a new understanding. Then, the librarian surprised him further. "Many come here seeking answers in books already filled, in stories already told. But perhaps your grandfather wanted you to discover that true value isn't only in what others have written, it's in what you have yet to write. This empty book is like your life, it can be anything you want, so long as you have the courage to fill it." She went on to share a brief story about an old poet who frequented the library. He would bring a blank notebook and spend hours, days, even weeks, sitting at the same table, writing and tearing out pages, beginning again and again. When asked why he didn't bring finished poems, he would reply that, to him, a blank book was where he could be true to himself, free from fear of mistakes. Just like that poet, the librarian concluded, the book you hold is an invitation to be authentic. It doesn't ask for perfection, only sincerity. A wave of understanding washed over the young man. Each word from the librarian seemed to resonate deeply within him, revealing that the value of the book lay not in what others might see, but in what he chose to write on each page. In that moment, he realized his grandfather had left him more than a material inheritance. He had given him an opportunity to reflect on his potential and to forge his own path, page by page. He left the library with the book in his hands, holding it now with a newfound reverence. The blank book, which had once seemed a meaningless gift, had transformed into a powerful metaphor for life itself, the importance of finding meaning in what appears empty and of writing one's own story, not seeking perfection, but striving to remain true to oneself. Now that you've followed this story, ask yourself, how have you been seeing the value of your own life? What are the blank pages in your journey, waiting for you to fill them? Are you letting the value others see define your life, or are you searching to discover your unique, inner worth? Let these questions resonate within you. If this story inspired you, leave a like to support the channel and ensure we can continue bringing you content like this. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss new reflections and stories. And in the comments, share your thoughts. We'd love to know how this story impacted you and your ideas about life's value. Thank you so much for joining us. May this message touch your heart and bring inspiration to your path. To close, I leave you with a Bible verse that reminds us of our worth in the eyes of God. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 20. May this reflection accompany you, and may each day bring a new opportunity to live with purpose and gratitude.